We uncovered 35 game-changing Washington facts, and today we're counting down the 10 that will completely change how you see the state. Think of this as a road trip from salt spray to sagebrush, from server farms to salmon runs. Buckle up. 15. The Missoula Floods, a landscape sculpted by Catastrophe. 15,000 years ago, a 2,000-foot wall of ice in Montana collapsed, unleashing the Missoula Floods, a torrent 10 times the flow of every river on Earth combined. This wasn't a flood. It was a planetary power washer. It scoured the Earth, carving the deep coulees and basalt cliffs of the channeled scablands. At Dry Falls, the water was once 5 times the width of Niagara. This matters because it gave Washington its raw, rugged interior that still challenges engineers today. 14. The Klondike Gold Rush, Seattle's economic Big Bang. In 1897, a ship steamed into Elliott Bay with a ton of gold, and Seattle went from a timber town to a global gateway. It was the big bang of the city's economy. Seattle didn't just find gold, it sold the tools to find it. Merchants outfitted 70,000 stampeders, building a fortune on supplies. This matters because the wealth from the Klondike built the foundations of modern Seattle, its banks, its shipping lines, and its global ambition. 13. The Timber Empire, building the world from the ground up. Before tech and jets, Washington was built on wood. By 1905, it was the largest lumber producer in the nation. The state's giant firs and cedars built the houses of the Midwest and the cities of California. It created a timber culture that defined a century. This matters because it established the state's first global trade routes and set the stage for the environmental battles that would later reshape America. 12. Engineering on water, the world's longest floating bridges. Lake Washington is too deep and its bottom too soft for traditional piers, so Washington engineers built bridges that actually float. Today, the state is home to 4 of the 5 longest floating bridges on Earth, including the SR 520, stretching over 1.5 miles. This matters because it proves that when geography says no, Washington engineering says yes, creating global benchmarks for transit challenges. 11. The Floating Highway, America's largest ferry system. Washington operates the largest ferry system in the United States, carrying over 20 million people and 10 million vehicles a year. These aren't just boat rides. They are legally designated as part of the state highway system, bridging the gap between islands and mainland. This matters because it maintains the cohesion of a region fragmented by deep water, proving that here, the water isn't a barrier, it's a road. 10. The Only Temperate Rainforest in North America. On the Olympic Peninsula, the Hoh rainforest drinks up to 140 inches of rain a year. The air tastes like wet stone and cedar. Nurse logs cradle new trees. Roosevelt elk ghosts through ferns taller than a person. Think ancient Sitka spruce and western red cedar draped in moss so thick the light turns green. 9. The Apple Empire that feeds America. Eastern Washington grows roughly 60% of America's apples. Yakima, Wenatchee, the Columbia Basin. What was sagebrush became orchard after the Columbia's water climbed into canals and drip lines. High desert sun sugars fruit by day, crisp nights lock in color by fall. Volcanic soils add nuance you can taste. Then science took over. Dwarfing rootstocks created slender, trellised trees you can harvest from the ground. Controlled atmosphere storage, pioneered here, lets apples breathe just enough to sleep until spring. Washington didn't stop at farming, it branded. WSU's breeding program gave growers cosmic crisp. Bees hum through rows in April. Bins roll to packing houses where cameras sort each apple. This matters because it proves research plus smart marketing can transform an economy. 8. Boeing built the jet age. Seattle, 1916. William Boeing takes a seaplane into the air and the city into its future. In W-2, Boeing Plant 2 hid under a fake neighborhood painted on its roof. Below, workers riveted B-17 flying fortresses that helped change the war. Then came the 707, the jet that made commercial air travel routine. The 747 put the world within a single flight and gave the skyline its hump. Then came the 707, the jet that made commercial air travel routine. The 747 put the world within a single flight and gave the skyline its hump. The 777 reimagined efficiency. The 787 Dreamliner rewrote aircraft design with carbon fiber composites. And the Everett factory? It is the largest building by volume on Earth, a space so vast it famously made its own clouds before engineers fixed the humidity. This is Jet City. 7. Seattle launched the digital economy. Microsoft came north in 1979, from Albuquerque to Bellevue, writing code for the personal computer. Across the lake, Amazon started in a rented Bellevue house with door desks and a bell that rang for every book order. Add in Nintendo of America, Valve, T-Mobile, Zillow, and a swarm of startups fed by the University of Washington's research engine, and you get a region that learned to ship software like the rest of the country ships wheat. Then came AWS, the cloud that quietly underpins a huge slice of the internet. Washington rewired how the planet works. 6. Grand Coulee is a power giant. The Grand Coulee Dam is the largest electric power producer in the United States, up to 6,809 megawatts when the river runs high. It swallowed enough concrete to dwarf Hoover 9 times over. During WHOO, its electrons smelted aluminum for airplanes and fed the reactors at Hanford. Its Columbia Basin project turned 671,000 acres of desert into fields of potatoes, onions, wheat, and yes, apples, a supply chain that stretches from a central Washington pivot sprinkler to a French fry in Tokyo. 5. Hanford, the nuclear shadow, and a salmon refuge. Out in the Sage, the Manhattan Project built B-Reactor, the world's first full-scale plutonium producer. Hanford made the plutonium for the Trinity test and for Nagasaki. It left 56 million gallons of waste in 177 aging tanks and a cleanup clock stretching toward 2077 with a price tag in the hundreds of billions. You can tour the B-Reactor and then step outside to watch salmon roll in a river older than memory. This matters because it's the paradox of Washington in one place, the highest stakes contamination beside a crucial salmon stronghold, forcing us to hold two truths at once. 4. Mount Rainier, the beautiful threat. At 14,111 feet, Rainier, Tahoma, owns the horizon. 26 named glaciers pour ice into every compass point, blue and crevassed and alive. Lahars, volcanic mudflows, have raced down these valleys before. The Osceola mudflow buried parts of today's South Sound 5,600 years ago. The strangest fact is still coming. Wait till you hear number 1. 3. Cascadia, the big one. Off the coast, the Juan de Fuca Plate is shoving itself under North America. A 600-mile fault is locked, storing centuries of strain. In 1700, it broke violently, dropping coastal forests into the tide and sending an orphan tsunami to Japan. Ghost forests mark where the land sank last time. 2. Washington invented modern environmental policy. In 1974, Judge George Bolt affirmed tribal treaty rights to half the harvestable salmon in U.S. v. Washington, making tribes co-managers of the resource. The Elwha River Dam removals, the largest in U.S. history, tore out 2-century-old barriers and watched salmon return to snow-fed headwaters. 1. Where the Pacific meets America. Washington sits where rainforest meets desert, where volcanoes split climates, and where Ice Age floods ripped the land into scablands and left the Palouse as waves of wind-blown soil. Drive 4 hours and pass tide pools at Rialto Beach, the green hush of the Hoh, rain shadow lavender and sequim. Drive 4 hours and pass tide pools at Rialto Beach, the green hush of the Hoh, rain shadow lavender and sequim. Hops in the Yakima Valley, vineyards climbing the Tri-Cities, and wind farms flicking across the Columbia Gorge. Shipyards in Bremerton, the Tech Corps in Seattle. The Columbia Dams powered an industrial century and erased ancient fisheries like Celilo Falls. Timber built the West and nearly erased forests. Wildfire smoke now drifts across mountains that once felt like a wall. Washington is the American stress test. It shows that limitless extraction has limits, and prosperity is a set of choices. Washington State is ready for your answer.